Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. I'm afraid I can't say it this week. I cannot say that Tottenham Hotspur is still top of the table, because they're not. Such is the tight and slightly crazy way the Premier League is right now. After pretty much a stuttering week, Tottenham Hotspur are fifth in the Premier League table, albeit only 2 points off second place and Leicester, but they are not top of that table anymore. Where do we start? What a day yesterday. It was one of those, I rocked up at the stadium. Obviously very fortunate in my position to be able to go into the stadium and cover games, and parked up on the south podium, looked up, lovely sky, just a few white clouds, took a photo of the outside of the south side of the building, which it's on Twitter and Instagram and all that, just showing what a lovely day, a really good kind of feeling about what the afternoon was going to bring. And then it all happened, and it all went a little bit wrong. It was just so uninspiring, a dull match. Mourinho was really unhappy afterwards about the first 20 minutes or so of the game. I'd say we were kind of, as reporters, some of us were just talking to each other after about 20, 25 minutes, and we were just like, I can't believe where that time's gone. It's just like nothing's really happened in this game. It was just such a, like I say, uninspiring is probably the best word to use, because I think, we've kind of got back used to having fans in the stadium, albeit only 2,000 of them. But I just think that little bit of pressure on the players, encouragement, and kind of not letting them just rest on their laurels, that was gone. And it very much was in evidence. And I was one that thought actually Tottenham had been kind of almost profiting from not having fans in the stadium. It kind of helped, certainly, when there were more defensive performances, or they were not gifting, but letting the other side have more possession. That was the kind of thing that would frustrate fans. But I kind of felt it worked the other way yesterday. I kind of felt that without the urgency that comes from having fans kind of letting you know when you're being slow in possession or not pressing the ball properly, I think that really affected Tottenham's performance, certainly in that first half. And they never really got, other than maybe a 10-minute spell before half-time, never really got going at all. And that was incredibly disappointing. I mean, Mourinho after the game, as everyone knows, I kind of find it quite interesting interacting with Mourinho and the way he thinks through his answers and everything. But I kind of felt that he didn't really cover himself in glory after the game in the way he spoke about it. It was very much like, I don't know about you, guys, but if you were, I don't know, when you were young, maybe you did something a little bit wrong, but you also did it with your brother or your sister as well. You got caught red-handed, whatever you were doing by your parents, and you'd dob in the other one. You'd say, "Oh, they did it too." That was kind of what Mourinho was like after the match yesterday. One of his quotes was, "Well, they didn't trouble us too," in kind of response to Spurs not creating a lot of chances in the game. And it's kind of like, really? That's the way you're going to go? Tottenham, the home team, created not too much other than that little spell. And later on, Son had that close range effort pushed away by Schmeichel. But yeah, it was just really dull stuff. And certainly in the way they play, I don't think, having previously come out and spoken about possession and how, you guys the media are obsessed with possession. It's not the be-all and end-all. It's about the final score and the result. You can't have it both ways. If you have a performance where Leicester essentially came and did that to Tottenham, Leicester were looking to play on the counter-attack as well. And if Leicester come away and do that, don't create many chances, but they win the game 2-0, you can't then complain and point at them. You haven't done your job as the home team. Like I say, I do think the fans, we've noticed that this weekend. I think the fans not being at grounds has made a difference. Even with Spurs and Crystal Palace last week. Palace had 2,000 fans in the ground. It was a good atmosphere. They pushed them on. And yes, Spurs weren't terrific, and Palace's keeper had a great game. But, 1-1. Liverpool go there, whatever it is, 7 days later, 7-0. It's very, very strange league. Like I say, obviously fans are playing their part, and some teams, like Fulham, drawing with Liverpool last weekend with fans, And this week, Newcastle playing Fulham, and Newcastle. You know what I mean. I'm not going to go too much down the fan route because I'm kind of going down there, but I do feel it makes that little bit of difference. I think the fans have something to bring to these games. But let's focus on Tottenham. I mean, the ultimately, just there wasn't much to their game plan. This was what worried me slightly. I mean, there's other little bits of play, little factors in play. It was the third game within 7 days. Mourinho hadn't changed up the team much over those 3 games. I think he only made 2 changes for Liverpool and then another 2 for Leicester. And some of those players looked like players that had played 3 games in 7 days and were a bit knackered by the end of it all. One slightly concerning thing I think with Mourinho is that he made a big deal about how strong his squad was now and how more balanced it was. Does he use that squad properly? I'd probably say no. I think he's come out in the last few days about how there's certain key players that he just has to play all the time. But if you're never going to give the other players that chance, they're never really going to be able to get the sharpness and rhythm that is demanded to then put in the performances that mean you can't or you can rest your key players. It's a bit of a vicious circle, and he's not really breaking that. He's giving them like one game in a while, and like we saw in Belgium, and he's having a real kind of moan about their performance and saying, I can't trust them. But they've got to get game time, and we'll come to one certain player who was conspicuous by his absence on the bench yesterday, who I think was kind of perfectly exemplifies that. But this Tottenham we're seeing right now, I don't want to go overboard because I looked at social media last night. This is why I always like to do these videos, roughly at least a day after the game, because it kind of lets the dust settle, lets you kind of think a little bit more broadly and across things rather than in the anger and emotion after a game. Because social media last night was, as it is, I'm sure, for most football clubs after bad results, it was a bit of a nightmare, a bit of a mess. It's all gone wrong. Mourinho's done. Bale's done. Aurier should be sold. All of these players should be got out of my club right now. They should never play again. It's always a bit overly dramatic. I do think there's little things that should be griped about and things that will have to change. But as I say, Tottenham are still 2 points off second place. They're in 5th in the league. It's not a disaster. There's a certain club across North London that are, teetering on the edge of the relegation zone, right now. So it's not a case of all things have gone completely wrong. It just hasn't been a great week. Mourinho said, and yes, I'll give him this, say Steven Bergwijn puts away 1 or 2 of those chances at Anfield, and Tottenham have come away from they go into yesterday's game having pulled off, a result at Anfield that no one's been able to do in whatever it is, 66 matches. That sometimes is the fine details, the fine line between success or not. But I don't think that gives any excuses for yesterday. Yesterday was, I think for me, what happened after the West Ham result, or say the West Ham second half collapse, was that Mourinho clearly decided never again. Before that, Tottenham had been scoring goals regularly, and you'd seen the way they started against West Ham, the 6 goals against Man U, the 5 goals at Southampton, the Maccabi Haifa big result as well. They were scoring goals. They were fullbacks are flying down the pitch. It was some really nice football being played, and everyone was talking about this kind of discarded the Mourinho traditions, the image, whatever you want to call it, the stereotypes. But then it was almost like they had that collapse against West Ham in the second half, and he decided never again. And from then on, everything's been quite pragmatic. Every game has been ground out. They've done well. Let's not get away from the fact we can't rewrite what's just happened and say like, oh, this terrible football, it hasn't done anything, because it has. Tottenham, were unbeaten in the Premier League when they went to Anfield since the first day of the season. But what I would say is, for me, it almost feels like Tottenham have taken their plan B, which does very well. They now definitely have a way of going to the big teams and getting results. They've beaten Man City and Arsenal in this recent run. And let's be honest, they were a couple of chances away, not taken chances away from beating Chelsea and Liverpool. Both of those games could have gone in different directions. So I think, and I'd hope, there's a confidence now that those matches that maybe Tottenham didn't expect to win in the past, or maybe were slightly more inconsistent in, you now believe that they can go in there, frustrate the opposition, and do everything. Liverpool obviously got the win, but like I say, could have really been a very different result. However, for me, that kind of needs to be your plan B. Your plan B that you roll out against these bigger sides. What is the slightly concerning aspect is that it's becoming, since the West Ham game, a plan A. Like, as in all the time. You know, you see them play against Burnley, Brighton, West Brom, Palace in the same kind of way. And for me, that's something that needs to be a fluid thing. It can't be the way that they always set up and play the fullbacks. You know, Spurs have got, certainly in Sergio Reguilon, one of the best attacking fullbacks. He can certainly defend, but one of the best attacking fullbacks in the Premier League now. Serge Aurier, we know what he can do going forward as well. So to kind of chain those two guys up, and it always reminds me of, I've probably told this before, and apologies if I have, but during the Jacques Santini era at Spurs, way back when Martin Jol was his assistant, they used to have training sessions, and the two fullbacks, I can't remember who they were now, whether they were maybe Edmund, and I can't remember, but in training sessions, if the fullbacks got past the halfway line, or even got kind of just crossed it slightly, Santini would blow the whistle and they'd restart the training match they were playing. It was a very strict thing. The fullbacks were meant to be defenders, nothing more. And it just kind of feels slightly that Mourinho's done that in recent games with Reguilon and Aurier. And I feel that's massively handicapping Spurs with a lot of their width, especially when you're then calling upon the attacking players to do a lot of defensive work as well. And it's kind of, I feel it's slightly doing a disservice to the quality that Mourinho's got in attacking areas. Yes, the defence has been, enormously built upon and protected, and it's much more like a Mourinho defence or a Pochettino defence. You could use that. Pochettino's defence in the first couple of seasons, maybe the second and third, I think it was the best defence in the Premier League in terms of goals conceded. And that was done without sacrificing attacking movement. So there's a balance. I think that's the key word. There's a balance to be had. He doesn't have to. He made a big thing after the game. Jamie Weir from Sky asked him about, do you feel your team has to be more proactive than reactive? And, Mourinho came out and said, I wasn't telling them to be reactive. I wasn't telling them not to be proactive. I didn't tell them to be bad in the first 20 minutes or so. That's all true. But, there's certainly a setup in a way that is kind of stalemating games and hoping for a bit of magic, which, like I say, I think does a disservice to the quality there. Yesterday you had Ondembele, Lo Celso, Son, Kane all starting that match. 4 players that can make stuff happen. And they didn't. I don't want to lay the blame completely on Mourinho because I think that's unfair. I do think the players let themselves down in that first half. I think the lack of movement, the lack of pressing. There were times I was saying to some of my fellow journalists, you look and they're pressing like as a pack in certain moments. And then in the next moment, just retreating back to their half and letting Leicester have loads of possession and do whatever they want with it. And it was kind of like, whenever they pressed, they actually won the ball back and would start breaks. And it's kind of like, well, why don't you do that all the time? Perhaps it comes down to, as I said, the third game in a week, being slightly more tired. And in that case, that's when you change up the players. I wasn't... Like I say, I'm worried that the plan B has become a plan A. And I don't think there's any need to. Mourinho at other clubs, Chelsea in their prime in the Premier League, yes, they're defensively sound, but they could run away with games. They could kill teams on the attack. At Real Madrid, I know it's a different scenario in the Spanish League and with the power there, but they scored a lot of goals, his Real Madrid team. And we saw it with Tottenham at the start of the season. They weren't conceding many goals, but they were scoring a lot. There's certainly, I think, needs to be 2 ways of playing as Tottenham Hotspur against whichever opposition it might be. We'll come to it a little bit later, but I do think Mourinho's hand might be slightly forced after this game. But we'll see. We'll come to that in a bit. I want to talk about the bench. I know it's a bit of a strange place to kind of not start, but attack so early on in this. But for me, I was really disappointed that Dele Alli wasn't on there. There was a comment left after the last video. Just let it go with Dele Alli, let it go. But I felt like a game like yesterday was exactly why I just can't let it go. Because on that bench, in his attacking players, you've got 9 players now you can have on that bench. The recent changes by the Premier League voted in meant that you can have 9 substitutes to choose from. And everyone, I think, kind of expected, okay, well, that's now Dele's chance. He's going to get on that bench. That's great. It was him and Winks, but only Winks got on there. And that was because Mourinho chose to go with 3 wingers and Vinicius. So you had Bale, Lucas and Bergwijn and Carlos Vinicius. For me, do you need 3 very wingers that will certainly bring a similar game? Not all the same, but will bring a similar game when they come onto the pitch. And I kind of felt not having Dele was quite shown up after what happened with Lo Celso. Obviously, Captain Harry Howe insight here. You can look at it and you can say, who would have thought that you could take off on Dembele at half time? Lo Celso lasts only, about 45 seconds of the second half and has to come off injured. But I just felt Mourinho's quotes afterwards. He was kind of talking about, I had to bring on Harry Winks because I know he's not an attacking midfielder, but I needed someone more central that, could get the passing going. And I was listening to the quotes and just my head was just scratching. This wasn't the press conference, this was a separate interview. I was trying to remember, I think it was the club interview that he did. And just my brain screaming, Dele Alli is the player that you would have had to then bring on in that scenario. I don't understand why all 3 wingers were required. And there was a point, let's not go away from it. How do I put it? I was one for going for Lo Celso and Dembele. I wanted to see it against Liverpool. I still believe that in the right scenario, those 2 players can work really well together. I still don't think they're at the peak fitness to do so. And I was disappointed with what they did, of course, yesterday. And clearly Mourinho believed it would work, which is why he did it. But we got to a point, at half-time where he felt that Dembele wasn't doing the job. I'd kind of, I'm a massive Tanguy Dembele fan. I didn't think he was at his best yesterday. And clearly Mourinho decided if I'm going to take one of those 2 off to change the game, it's probably going to be Dembele because Dembele won't be able to last the full second half. And then what do I do when I have to take him off at 65 minutes? Whereas Lo Celso perhaps can last the second half. Clearly, it all went very, very wrong. Within his first challenge, within 30, 45 seconds or so, Lo Celso looked like potentially a hamstring, maybe, and he couldn't really continue. He kind of tried, which maybe wasn't the greatest thing, and then came off. But yeah, I just kind of felt there was a lack of movement around those 2 that didn't help them. Their own lack of passing success wasn't great either. They both had to press, which I didn't think they were doing all the time. So when you then make that decision to switch it up, bring on Gareth Bale, you've got Lo Celso still playing that kind of not playmaker, but a central attacking role that you need. When Lo Celso went off, Lucas Moura came on, and suddenly Tottenham's whole shape was a bit of a mess, to be honest. You kind of had, it was almost like an old school 4-4-2, but with no attacking threat through the middle. Lo Celso, you had Son and Lucas kind of on either side, and you kind of had Bale and Kane. Bale was like a target man at times. It was such a strange formation with very little creativity in it. And just for me, that just showed that Dele Alli, anyone that says he can't still do a job for Tottenham, I fully acknowledge that he was only on the bench for Palace and Liverpool because Bale was ill. With the restrictions with 7 subs, that was the only reason he was on there. But then he did well enough in his little cameos to then keep Vinicius out of the team. So I just found it really odd that when you were then allowed to have 9 substitutes, he wasn't on there. He may well get a little bit of a chance now with Lo Celso. We don't know the extent of the injury yet. But, if Dele plays against Stoke City on Wednesday night and does really well, perhaps that then gets the confidence going, gets Mourinho in a position where he can't ignore him. If that doesn't improve, we all know what's going to happen next month. Dele Alli will head off somewhere, probably likely on loan. But I just felt that it was just the biggest example yesterday of how Spurs do still need that option of him. And Mourinho needs to trust more in these other players. Really, really disappointing. I was disappointed with Lo Celso and Dembele, like I say. Lo Celso very unfortunate with the injury, but I just felt the combination has so much potential with the power, the dribbling ability, the first-time passing that both of them can do. But it just felt like also almost like Moussa Sissoko was pushed into more of an attacking, driving role than those two, and that shouldn't be the case. I'm going to come to Sissoko a little bit later. But yeah, just very disappointing. God, it sounds depressing, doesn't it? Apologies, but we're just kind of, it's quite cathartic, isn't it, to break it down and look at all the individual parts and see kind of why it wasn't working. But I wanted to talk about Gareth Bale as well. Again, I still kind of feel like there's been overreactions here. You know, the guy came back from illness. This was his first match back. 45 minutes, like I say, spent in some very odd positions as a target man winning headers. Then switching back out to the right. Then there was one bizarre moment for a good 2 to 3 minutes. He was playing at right back with Moussa Sissoko playing as a right winger ahead of him. You know, it only kind of, and it wasn't for, I saw it and I thought, oh, maybe he's just covering because Sissoko's gone off the pitch, up the pitch. It was after Aurier had gone off. And I was kind of thought, okay, it's just a momentary thing. But it kept going. And it was only when Bale went on a bit of a run that Sissoko went back and it kind of changed back again. So he's very much being played in some very strange places. There were a couple of bright moments. He went on a couple of runs inside from the right. One jinked past a couple of players and then got brought down and had the free kick that he sent over. The next, very similar, beat a couple of players, but I think he got the ball away to someone before he was brought down. There were little signs that he was trying to kind of open his legs and get running, but ultimately he's just not fit and sharp yet. This is the thing. I think a lot of Spurs fans have been waiting, 7 years to have him come back to the club, dreaming every transfer window, that'll be the one he comes back. And now he's come back, it's almost as if they're not really giving him much time. He came back, and I'm sorry to repeat this, but year of barely playing any football, having injuries within that as well. Then no pre-season this summer really at all. Then picked up an injury on international duty, which kept him out for more than a month. So essentially he's kind of trying to have his pre-season within the season. And Mourinho, you'll have seen the Amazon documentary, so you'll know things like I do, that Mourinho is not a man who accepts illness, injuries, anything like that as any barrier or excuse for not playing. So if he is taking it careful with Bale and slowly, gradually bringing him into matches, it's because he knows that he needs this base layer of fitness and sharpness before he can do anything. I felt he was working more defensively as well. Like I say, he was playing at right back, for goodness sake, at times. But I think just people, 31 years old, give him a little bit of time. This is one of the best players, has been one of the best players on the planet. And as I said again before, Tottenham very much went into this with looking to get the option for a second year of loan because they knew it was going to take him a little while to get up and running. I've always said I kind of felt that the new year was going to be roughly when you were going to see Gareth Bale starting to find his rhythm and hit his stride. Obviously, this illness hasn't helped. Was it flu kind of like stuff he had? But hopefully you'll see him start against Stoke. You'll see him start to get minutes because the games are so thick and fast over the next few weeks. And then when he's into this rhythm of starting games properly, not in the Europa League, at the actual faster pace of the English games, then I think you'll start to see the proper Gareth Bale. I feel people are seeing people saying send him back and stuff like that. It's so early. He only joined in September. Didn't play any games until, was it mid-October? So literally you've had, where are we now? So month and a half, 2 months of him. And within that, obviously, we've had an illness and you've had him kind of just trying to get his fitness up after so long of not really playing regular football. Give him time. Give him time, definitely. Lucas, quite disappointed. I think Lucas has had a bit of a tough time at the moment. He's coming into matches and not really making any impact. He gave the ball away for Leicester's second goal, wasn't it? He's not really doing what he can do. And I kind of felt, and it's quite ironic, after the abuse he got from some in midweek, I kind of felt Spurs missed Steven Bergwijn yesterday. it's kind of embarrassing, some of the things that were said to him after the match at Liverpool. I've got this real bugbear, and I'm sorry to kind of say this, but I'll have to analyse matches, I have to analyse players' performances. It's all kind of part of the work that I do, and I'll write about them, I'll talk about them and stuff, and then on Twitter or social media, I'll have someone will reply, and they do this in their own posts as well, tagging in the player's name and saying, let's use him as an example, at Steven Bergwijn, you were awful. I'd sell you in the January window and stuff like that. And you just kind of think, there's a little bit of inside that just kind of cringes so much. And just people, I don't know whether it's people that play FIFA or Football Manager, and they almost see these, or they see them on the TV, they almost see footballers as computer game characters or TV characters. And they just kind of forget these are human beings. These are young guys. Steven Bergwijn only turned 23 2 months ago, and some of the comments that were left on his Instagram account after the Liverpool game, this guy will look at these, his family will look at these, and you just kind of thought, I've seen some people go, oh yeah, but you get paid that sort of money, you should be tough enough to take whatever comes your way. It's like, that's not a case of that. You're not going to go up to someone on the street and just accuse them of whatever and tell them how awful they are to their face and stuff like that. I don't like it. It's a very much, hiding behind some Twitter profile that's, probably not even got you in the profile. I don't know, but yeah, I'm not a massive fan of it. And obviously, Bergwijn had to limit who could comment on his account after it because it got really nasty. And the players I know certainly rallied behind him at Hotspur Way. Mourinho came out backing him, not backing him quite enough to start him, albeit yesterday. But I kind of felt like, yes, he missed those chances, but against Liverpool, but he got himself into those positions. He was non-stop running. He worked hard defensively, but he also was breaking on past the likes of Son and Kane and really getting in behind the Liverpool defence. Spurs didn't do that against Leicester. They actually missed Steven Bergwijn doing that. So, while we're all very quick to criticise, myself included, some take it a step further and actually abuse players, but you kind of got to look at what they bring to the game as well. And I felt Bergwijn was a bit of a missing link yesterday. And, as I'll always say as well, we can include Bale in this. We can include Bergwijn in it. And the lack of patience that I think we have in the modern, maybe it's a modern era, maybe this was something that always happened, but I don't know. We all want it now. We want instant. We don't look at variables. We don't look at circumstances. We don't look at age. We don't look at people having adjust. Bale's been away for the English game for 7 years. He's got to get used to it, on top of the fitness and injury problems. Bergwijn is coming from the Dutch league, which is it's an enjoyable league, but it's nowhere near the level of the Premier League. And I'd say, actually, he's done quite well in terms of adapting to the physical side of the game. It just needs to, he came in and against Man City and scored that amazing debut goal, and perhaps it raised a lot of expectations on what people were going to get straight away. I just kind of feel there's this we need it now mentality. And perhaps again, Spurs have raised expectations by getting to the top of the league in a season where Mourinho's quite freely admitted he didn't expect Spurs to be at the top of the table. He wanted them to challenge higher up the table, but he didn't expect them to be sitting on top of the table so early on. And very much a team in being moulded, I guess, into the way he wants. So, you look at it and you think, what if Spurs fans had not given Harry Kane time? Look at all the loans he's been out, and he's never going to make it. Get rid of him. What if after Son's tough first season, and the player himself even wanted to leave and go back to Germany? What if they said, bomb him out. What's he done in the first season? So inconsistent. What if they'd done that to Gareth Bale in his first season after he came from Southampton when, he... Was it run to 24 games without winning in a Spurs shirt? Something like that. And you just kind of think, these young guys and also returning guys, older guys, you've just got to give them a little bit of time to adapt. And, they always say, especially even with foreign players, that, sometimes they can take a year. Tanguy Ndombele obviously wasn't great yesterday, but I think we're only seeing a much better Tanguy Ndombele a year on. Lo Celso's barely had any, he hasn't had any pre-seasons whatsoever at Tottenham, and he's had these injury problems. I just feel we've kind of lost patience in the modern world. Maybe it's something to do with having everything now, here and now, in our information and technology. Perhaps we take that into other things. But yeah, I just kind of feel we've lost our patience. And again, not excluding myself from this, sometimes, I get a little frustrated. I've even seen people writing off Carlos Vinicius. The guy's had, 3 goals and 3 assists, I think, in his 5 or 6 Europa League games. He's done fine. If anything, he's not getting enough chances in the Premier League. I think he's done okay. So I'm very sure I've seen Matt Doherty written off after barely actually getting into his Tottenham career yet. And I'm not going to go down the Matt Doherty stuff that I've said in the past of how this is a wing back having to adapt to being a right back again because of the Sergio Reguilon deal, which came as a little bit of a left field thing. But we're even writing off signings that have been here 2 months. It's just, it's all very reactionary. And, you just know, 6 months, a year down the line when the same players are doing very well, everyone will be loving what they do. Or the flip side, they could be doing superbly and they have a little run of a bad time and people turn against them. It's, Dele Alli has been getting that. And then when he's not playing, the absence makes the heart grow fonder, and suddenly he's someone that's desperately needed again. It's well, that's football, isn't it? I guess that's kind of what football fandom is all about. It's about being reactionary. It's about the highs and lows. Every defeat's the worst thing in the world, and every victory is the best thing in the world. It's a funny old game, as a certain former Tottenham striker once said. But yeah. We're going to talk about Serge Aurier. I kind of very briefly touched on him. I was gutted, to be honest, yesterday, because anyone that knows, I'm been one of Serge Aurier's probably biggest critics, I think, since he came to Tottenham. But I've been so happy with the way he's been playing this season on the whole. I think, in a weird way, concentrating on his defensive duties has actually improved his defensive performances. I think he's been really, really, really good in a lot of the games. But yes, yesterday we kind of saw the old Serge Aurier, which was so disappointing. The challenge on Fofana was just daft. I watched another replay of it this morning. He's not even looking at what he's doing. He kind of almost just turns into him and just pushes him. And we saw it in real time at the stadium. It was just like, they're going to look at this on the VAR. It's going to be a penalty. Spurs could sweep up the pitch and go and score now. It's going to get ruled out. It's just madness. It was so daft, and that wasn't his only mistake. He was back to doing the silly Serge Aurier that, rather than getting back up and down the pitch, was going forward, and I wouldn't even say into dangerous areas, even just like the halfway line, but then not getting back. There was one moment early in the second half when he kind of left Alderweireld in all kinds of problems, didn't get back, and it was all a bit of a nightmare for the Belgians to deal with. And then for the second goal, he was stuck up pitch, which left Moussa Sow to get involved, and we'll come to that in a little bit. That was a complete mess. And then when he was substituted, Aurier just went straight off down the tunnel in a proper kind of strop. He didn't do himself any favours. And, he now, when you look at it, since he came to Tottenham in 2017 from PSG, he's conceded more penalties in the Premier League than anyone else but David Luiz. David Luiz, I think, has conceded 5 and Aurier's conceded 4. And you just look at, even this season, even an improved Aurier just does silly things in important moments. You look at, let's say, the West Ham game. The West Ham game, after a really good first half, second half he started to switch off a bit. And it was his foul that led to the free kick that West Ham's equalising final late dramatic goal came from. Then you look at Crystal Palace game last weekend. It was his foul on Wilfried Zaha late on that led to the free kick that Schlupp scored from. And I don't want to say this is a mistake too much, because I think that would be a bit harsh. But it was his clearance, which was a good interception in the Liverpool game, that led to the corner that Firmino scored from. That one I don't really want to use as an instance of a bad defending, because I thought that was good defending. But it's just kind of to show that in a lot of Tottenham's bad moments late in games, and very much other defenders should be then defending from that point on, he just will sometimes get Spurs into positions that they then have to desperately defend from. And it's just silly little things like that, you've all seen the Amazon documentary clip before the Olympiacos game, early on in Mourinho's time, when he very clearly dug out Aurier in the dressing room and said, "Look, you scare me that you're going to give a beep VAR penalty away. You really scare me." Because it was true. And yesterday was very much back to Aurier being that kind of not so great player. And I hope it's just a blip. I hope this isn't, him getting back to the inconsistent Aurier, because I do think he's been really, really good this season. But Matt Doherty likely to get a chance on Wednesday night against Stoke. And he, as I said, been very much a transition for him in remembering to be a right back again, which is very different. Don't let anyone tell you that it's just literally standing a few paces back to being a wing back. It's not. It's a very different role in a different position, a different kind of defensive work needed, different covering your centre back. And I think if he's been working hard on that, let's see what he does on Wednesday night. But he'll get chances over these coming weeks, and I think you'll see a better Matt Doherty. This competition drives them both on. Doherty coming has driven on Aurier, and I think Aurier's mistakes will also give Doherty some confidence that he can now get back in this team. It was looking like he maybe wasn't even going to get the shirt, and that's what competition is about. This is why I keep going on about the squad and how important it is that Mourinho shows these other players, if you do well, you can get in my team. There's been too much of a message recently for me of, well, there's certain players who I'll just play well, whatever, because I need to. They're so important. And I just think that really sends a bad message. That was one thing about Pochettino. He hated that idea. Yes, we knew the likes of Kane and Eriksen were probably going to start most matches, but publicly and probably privately, he would always bang on about the collective. And I do think Spurs, perhaps in the last week or two, have kind of got away from that and what Mourinho's saying, and I don't think it does them any favours. So yeah, Aurier, yeah, not great, but also Moussa Sissoko. I'm one of those who hasn't always jumped on the Sissoko scapegoat train. I think the key with Sissoko is knowing what his limitations are. Pochettino came out with a really good phrase once. He said, "We know what Moussa can't do, but we also know that he can do things that others can't." And it's about creating essentially a job, his job being exactly based within those things he can do. Because on the transition, he can turn Tottenham from defence into attack in a moment and take the ball up the pitch and get them going. The problem is when you have games like yesterday where, as I said earlier, for some bizarre reason, Sissoko was given the role of being a more attacking player, being the one who was on the front foot, getting down the wing at times, pushing forward towards the edge of the box. And anyone that's watched Moussa Sissoko knows that if Sissoko has the ball in an attacking area, he always needs to take a beat. Just a minute, not a minute, but a moment to think about what he's then going to do with the ball. And we know that at the very top level, in those attacking moments, in tight situations, you take that beat just to think, it's done. The chance has gone, other players have caught up, spaces where you could play a through ball have all gone. He shouldn't be doing that role. That should have been Lo Celso on Dembele yesterday. That should have been Dele Alli coming in the second half. That should have been Gareth Bale being the one pushing on down the right. And I just felt that it just contributed to a really all-round sloppy performance from him. And for the goal, yes, as I said, he was covering for Aurier. He shouldn't have had to be put in that role. But his defending for Leicester's second goal was shocking, really. It was almost as if he forgot that Vardy was behind him. There was no jump. Vardy, Vardy is, I think Sissoko's got about 4 or 5 inches on Jamie Vardy, if not more. Yet Vardy jumps so high, Sissoko stands down, and then you have that really awkward, embarrassing moment of Vardy just heading it against Alderweireld and it bouncing in with Lloris wrong-footed. It just wasn't a really good game for Sissoko. For me, I felt it was more just, as it was for the team, a bad day at the office. I don't think it's one that you can really, and I'm hoping this is the case with Aurier as well, not, the tweets afterwards about sell him. You should never. I actually saw people when he was substituting saying, "I never want him to play a game for this club again, my club." And he's just like, "Wow, that's an overreaction." 2-3 games ago, he was one of the best right backs probably in the Premier League this season. He'd been that good for Tottenham. That against Man United at Old Trafford, that goal he scored as well, just topped off an amazing performance. I thought he played well against Liverpool as well at Anfield. Aurier, obviously, we're talking about as well. But yeah, there were too many players not having good games. And, I'd include Kane and Son. Don't get off of this either. Both of them completely feel that they didn't have a decent amount of service. That's true. But they didn't do much with the ball when they had it. Kane, there's a lot of reliance on him now being essentially the new Eriksen as well as Harry Kane. And if he's not doing it, Leicester defended well. I've got to say that as well. I was watching some of the game back this morning. Leicester defended really well. Some of the way they kind of blocked Son out of the game down the left was very good, and they didn't let Kane have the space and the ball in the spaces that he likes to have it. But still, no one really had a very good game. My player ratings, I don't think anyone got above a 6 in them, and there were some pretty low numbers in there as well. But yeah, it just it was an odd one. It was a. I think hopefully we'll say it's a bad day at the office. Like I say, I hope, as I said earlier, I hope it forces a little bit of a change in the balance of the way Tottenham play. Mourinho's been very clear about Tottenham are not in this title race. He was asked by one of the radio reporters, I think it was the BBC after the game, is this what did he say? It was something like, is this damaging how sorry, that was it. Now Liverpool being 6 points ahead of you in the Premier League, on top, is that now an insurmountable gap to bridge? And he was like, he actually kind of smiled as well. He was like, you really think we're competing with Liverpool? Which isn't great for Tottenham fans to hear, but what he's saying essentially is what he said the whole way through, is that the Liverpool finances, the Liverpool structure and what they've done, winning the league, winning the Champions League, they're at a different place than Tottenham right now. Tottenham are trying to get there. He's always very much said that this would be one of transition, and he didn't expect to, the whole pony in a horse race comment. Very much this was about doing that. And it's a difficult one because as fans and as journalists as well, you very much get excited about Tottenham being top of the table and up there, and you kind of, it's still very tight, and you think Tottenham can do that. And he was very much like this in his first season when he came back to Chelsea. He very much said, not now, we'll be up there. It's about next season. This kind of feels like what he's doing with Tottenham. With Chelsea that year, I think they finished 2 or 3, 4 points off the title, and then the next year they won it. But like I say, I want to see a bit of a balance. I think you'll see Mourinho made a little point the other day about how he's got his office. I'm not sure entirely whether it's his main office or he has another office that he uses that is really close to the players' changing room at Hotspur Way, so that when they come out, essentially his door's open and they can walk in and talk to him. I wouldn't be shocked after that performance whether you get some of the players would have made their feelings known. Kane is a very vocal leader, and he's not worried about telling Mourinho what he thinks. Lloris is the same. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those players have come in this week, this week, today or tomorrow, and they'll go and talk to Mourinho and say, look, can we not just adjust this a bit? Let us be the players we can be, but we'll also work hard, but you've got to trust in us that we can do that and this. We can't be playing, like I say, the likes of Burnley, Brighton, West Brom, Palace, who, yes, a really good side as well. It'll be despite their thrashing at the weekend. They're doing very well, very organised. But Tottenham should not be going to those teams and essentially trying to lure them out of their shell and then striking. Tottenham should be going there, being happy in position, being happy to break teams down, because they've got players like Kane, Son, Lo Celso, Dele, Bale, Lucas, Bergwijn, Dele Alli, Lamella's on his way back, not quite yet, but he'll be back. There's so many attacking players in there. You can't tell me that's a team that only has its strengths on the counter-attack. It doesn't. They've got this great system now, the counter-attacking system to play the big 6 or 7, whatever you want to call it, and that's great for that. That will probably hopefully overcome a bit of a barrier, and especially in cup competitions. You'd imagine now in one-off games, whereas maybe there wasn't confidence of beating the likes of Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool United, teams like that, Man City, in these bigger cup games, you kind of feel that Spurs could go into those now and it'd be a real threat and danger in the way they play. But you look at the games that are coming up next, Wolves perhaps slightly different in Premier League, that will be a possession-based game for them, but you've got Fulham and Leeds, and I think Sheffield United are coming up as well. So Spurs have to be confident in what they can do from an attacking sense. Unshackle Sergio Reguilon and Serge Aurier or Doherty, whoever's playing, and let let them do what they can do. And I think you saw at the start of the season what this Tottenham, after the Everton game, what this Tottenham team can be. Even in the Newcastle game, had so many chances before that late equaliser. And the West Ham game could have been so much more even before they had that disastrous last 10 minutes. So, it's not doom and despair. It really isn't. They've got the tools to do the defensive game in the big matches. They've got the tools to play the attacking game in all the other games as well. So, I'd hope, like with the West Ham game, created a bit of a forced change in the way they play. I hope this Leicester game does something similar, but in a different direction. Because, Spurs are 2 points off second place. They're in 5th in the league. It's not a disaster. It's not doom and gloom. Mourinho's not suddenly a dinosaur week after games where he's been called a tactical genius. The good players aren't suddenly bad players. It just doesn't work like that. It's just a little thing that kind of almost needs to be nipped in the bud and get them back to winning ways. They've been pretty consistent as well in the way they play and the results, and there's no reason they can't now go on another run. They'll be analysing, they'll be sorting this out, they'll be reviewing it. The coaches, Ledley, King, João Sacramento, Mourinho, they'll be working on this. They'll be working on a way to make it more appealing as well. And like I said, the fans coming back in the stadium when all of this madness is done and gone, and the fans are back, they're going to want to be, Russell Crowe and Gladiator. Are we not entertained? Are you not entertained? That's what the fans want. There needs to be a balance. So a bit of a Star Wars, bring balance to the Force. That's kind of what needs to happen at Tottenham Hotspur. So I'm going to wrap up there. I'm actually technically off now until the Fulham game, but obviously I'll be watching the games ahead. Interesting to see what happens with Stoke. Stoke are really struggling goalkeeper-wise. I think they've got 6 goalkeepers out, injured. Potentially playing a debutant that's kind of came in on trial in goal as an emergency, I think it was an emergency loan signing. But they're not going to be a walkover team. They're doing quite well this season. So Spurs are going to have to be on it. I think there'll be a mix of players out there. Ones who key players and the ones that need minutes. I hope Dele Alli gets a chance. I hope Bale starts, and I hope we see a positive performance, a little bit of a fight back, and then Wolves is a tough game, but hopefully Tottenham can do something there. Just get their mojo back. That's what it's all about. So, sorry, waffled on for too long. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves. And if I don't talk to you before Christmas, hopefully I will. But if I don't, have a good Christmas despite the circumstances. Hopefully there'll be, for everyone, many more Christmases to come that we can all enjoy. And hopefully Tottenham will give us something to enjoy as well soon, because it certainly didn't yesterday. So, catch you later. Bye.